Welcome to the Real Estate Espresso Podcast, your morning shot of what's new in the world of real estate investing. I'm your host, Victor Menashe. Happy first of the month. On the first day of each month, we review the book of the month. In order to be considered for book of the month, the book has to meet a very simple criteria. It has to be either impactful enough that it will change your life or your perspective on the world. Whether it does or not depends, of course, entirely on you. If you consume the content as a piece of entertainment, well, you're kind of missing the point. But if you internalize it, make the book part of you, you've got a real opportunity for transformation. On today's show, we're taking a deep look at the book called Rocket Fuel by Gino Wickman and Mark Winters. In addition to being book of the month, this is a book that we use deeply within the operation of our business. We hold regular weekly and quarterly meetings, and the conduct of these meetings is framed through the teachings of this book, along with two other books that we're going to be talking about in upcoming months. Not only that, we've undertaken a book study within the leadership team of our assisted living business with this book, Rocket Fuel, as the core of that book study. The various construction managers, regional executive directors for each site, and the CEO of the operations company are all participating in the book study. The way we conduct the book study is by reviewing one chapter each week together on a 30 to 45-minute Zoom call. Each of the members of the team shares what they internalized from that chapter and how the teachings of that chapter apply to our business. Now, if you haven't undertaken a book study, this is another way to consume content that involves internalizing the book's contents in a meaningful way. So let's dig into the book, Rocket Fuel. The title might seem a little obscure. The idea behind the title is that rocket fuel is made up of two vastly different elements, usually hydrogen and oxygen. By themselves, hydrogen and oxygen don't have huge energy potential, but in combination, the results are extraordinary. So what does this obscure analogy have to do with business? In companies that have visionary leadership, many of them fail because they lack the leadership to execute. At the other end of the spectrum, companies that focus solely on execution, they lack the vision, they also underperform. Those companies that achieve escape velocity are those that have a visionary leader and an integrator. These are different skills, and the magical pairing of these two attributes in two top leaders are the key to enabling breakthrough performance. Nelson Rockefeller was the visionary. Henry Flagler was the integrator. Together, they built Standard Oil into the largest oil company in the world. Steve Jobs was the visionary, and Steve Wozniak was the integrator in the early days of Apple. And more recently, when Steve Jobs came back as CEO, he was the visionary and Tim Cook was the integrator. There's numerous examples of these types of pairings. Ford Motor Company wouldn't exist if Henry Ford didn't have a strong integrator. Walt Disney and Roy Disney were the yin and yang that made that business work. Honda Motors was flailing until they too got a strong integrator. When a visionary is missing a strong integrator in the leadership team, then the visionary is forced to play out of position. They're forced to perform some of the integrator's roles, which is not their true strength. Visionaries tend to be optimists. They tend to see what's possible. They solve huge problems. They address the why something needs to be done. And the landscape is littered with visionary dreamers who could not execute. The integrator solves implementation problems. Integrators address the how something is done. It's not enough to have a visionary and an integrator. There's lots of examples of companies that had great visionaries and the chemistry between the visionary and the integrator wasn't working. In other cases, the integrator was too weak and the visionary had to play out of position in order to compensate. And while there can be many people who have integrator qualities, and you need them all, by the way, there can only be one integrator in the company, that chief operating officer with whom the buck stops. There can only be one visionary for the business. That isn't to say you might not have those types of pairings within a function, like say, for example, marketing. You could have a marketing visionary and a marketing integrator. Those pairings can be powerful at a functional level, but that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is the leadership of the organization. The second half of the book is dedicated to discussing how to construct an effective partnership between a visionary and an integrator. It discusses the contracts of accountability that are essential to having an effective partnership. It discusses the 5 rules that are needed to govern the business. You need absolute core alignment in that visionary-integrator relationship in order to harness the power of the unique combination. And if that alignment doesn't exist, the experience is more like children looking to their parents for guidance when there's a dysfunctional marriage. So the 5 rules are, number 1, the 2 leaders have to stay on the same page. Number 2, you don't allow any end runs. If you don't like the answer from mom, you don't go ask dad and vice versa. Number 3, the integrator is the tiebreaker. Number 4, both the visionary and the integrator are employees when working in the business. And number 5, they have to maintain mutual respect. No different than an effective marriage. The 2 leaders need to embrace each other's differences and support each other despite the style differences. At the end of the day, the business wins and loses on execution. The integrator has to deliver and keep a steady hand on the helm. The visionary by themselves is capable of bringing enough opportunity to sink the business and make it spin out of control. So if you're running a business, definitely go out and get a copy of Rocket Fuel and see how it could apply to the leadership of your organization. As you think about that, have an awesome rest of your day. Go make some great things happen. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.